It's quite empowering to realize that the outside reflects the inside. Because you and I and each of us can control the inside. We back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. Today's reflection, philosophical reflection, this is inspired by the words that Eckhart Tolle usually says. I've heard others say it, but I first heard him say it, so I'm going to give the quote, the attribution of the quote to him, and it's a brilliant line. That we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. Swami in different lectures will talk about how whatever your wiring is, that's the kind of people you see in the world. If you are wired to be corrupt and a fraudster, then you say, hey, go out and find me someone that isn't corrupt, that isn't a fraudster, but is squeaky clean. That person will come back 2 weeks later, like, everybody is corrupt a little bit. I can't find anyone that isn't corrupt a little bit. And a lot of people, they're really corrupt. Total scammers. You ask someone that is a saint, and you say, go out and find me someone that is corrupt. That is a total fraudster. Just trying to grift from the world. And that person, go out and 2 weeks later, see the world as they are. They'll go out and see people trying. Happy and blessed hours is it when wickedness stands forth as goodness bereft of a guide. Others see wickedness of, they're real bad. Those are bad people. And other people see them as good, just bereft of a guide. My favorite comedian, Pete Holmes, would often say, well, I don't want to say favorite because a few comedians listen to the podcast. Another good friend, Theo Vaughn, actually wrote a comment. He wrote first to a video recently. So if he hears this, both of y'all, well, you two and Rick Glassman, love you guys. But Pete always uses this phrase. I was covering my butt there for a second. Pete always uses this phrase on his podcast, if I were them, I'd be them. And whenever you have the tendency to want to judge someone, you look at them and say, if I were them, I'd be them too. I love that line. What an empathetic, compassionate line. Perspective to have instead of condemnation. But going back to the phrase, we see not the world as it is, but we see what we are. The outside reflects what's going on inside, which is so counter to how most of us operate. We think, well, everything I see is pretty objective. I see it like it is. Everything we hear. Oh, I heard her say that. Oh, no, I know exactly what she meant. I know exactly what he meant when he said that. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't hear it accurately. At first, it can be alienating to hear something like that, even if it resonates with you, even if it feels like there is some truth there. It feels like, well, man, if I'm not seeing the world as an objective environment, then what am I seeing? What am I missing? What am I hearing? What am I not hearing? What am I superimposing that isn't there? What am I misinterpreting about the world? That is totally natural to have this first knee-jerk reaction of what am I missing? But what's so fascinating about this perspective, something that I've found fascinating about this perspective in the last few days is it's quite empowering to realize that the outside reflects the inside. Because you and I and each of us can control the inside. If you take this phrase as logical after reflecting on it of, yeah, maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see. Maybe I'm seeing what I reinforce in my inner dialogue. Maybe what I'm seeing has been wrong, so what I'm so convinced I saw or thought or I knew about the world has been so wrong before. Maybe I'm open to this idea that I'm only seeing what I want to see and I'm not seeing what I ought to see, what I should see. Even when we hear a philosophical perspective or a lecture or read a great reorienting, deep philosophical book, we might only take away what we really need in that moment or what we think we need. But if we give some space to this concept that, yeah, maybe this Eckhart Tolle quote is right of, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. If we give some space to that, and yes, this is one of those episodes where you might hear my daughters playing in the backyard with their friends. But if we give some space to that concept, then like I said, it's hard to find anything more empowering than to realize you can shift what you see, what you hear, what you perceive, and the entirety of the external world based on what you hear, see, reflect on, perceive, internalize, in here. Change yourself, and maybe it's true that you change the entirety of your relationship with the world. And if that's the case, change the entire dynamic of you in the world. And that's nearly as good as changing the world itself. This isn't philosophy. This is just introspection, maybe experimentation. Maybe trying a day where you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I love you 20 times in a row. Seeing if it shifts your relationship with the world. Maybe you are hard on yourself for something that you regret and you say, I forgive you. Into the mirror 30 times in a row. See if that creates forgiveness with others that might have wronged you. See if that creates a difference in the relationship between you and those people, you and the world. This philosophy, and Eckhart Tolle's philosophy is this philosophy, Advaita Vedanta. And what Advaita Vedanta tells us is that this external world is all a reflection of what's happening within us. Way more than what I'm even touching on right now. Way more than just relationally or kind of the dynamic shifting, but this entire external universe that we think is there, that we're this tiny little speck of dust floating around in. It's the opposite. That is a mirage of infinitesimal value compared to the mind that is projecting it, your mind that is projecting the entirety of this universe. Take it or leave it. That's a lot to swallow. Episode 1 touches on the summary of the whole philosophy in 15 minutes. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to that one. And to connect these 2 points, the first being an introspective, relative concept that you could practice later today, shifting your internal state to see what it does to the relationship with the external. All the way to the grand concept I just outlined, that the entirety of the external is a projection of the internal. The stitching between these two would be this, and what this philosophy says over and over and over again, is if you want to change your relationship with the outside world, all it takes is a shift of your inner world. That's all it takes. And to shift the inner world, it's 3 daily practices. Question everything. Don't take anything for granted. Even if 1 million people tell you the sky is green, You really just want to be a part of the community. Question everything and don't take it for granted just because you're told it. Kick the tires. Make sure it really passes through your own reason and judgment. And the other interpretation on it's kind of a double-edged sword with don't take anything for granted. It's also grateful for whatever, radical gratitude for whatever is happening in your life. It could feel like it's falling apart, and yet you still choose to not take it for granted. Got like 6 kids on a trampoline outside. Part of me could say, hey, that's a bit of a distraction. And then bigger part of me is like, that's exactly what a home is for. Kids and their friends being able to play, laugh, have a carefree afternoon. It's better use for this physical space than perhaps even this podcast episode. And the third daily practice is to study and reflect on a daily basis. Not once every 8 days, not a few times and then you take 4 weeks off, but every day, 5, 10, 15 minutes of timeless study and reflection. It could be, as I always say, it could be Socrates, it could be Gospel of John, it could be Augustine, it could be Vedanta treatise, which is my favorite. 2-3 pages a day. But doing it on a daily basis, because there is no cure for the virus. The external world telling you that, oh, it's all in your job. It's all in your career. It's all about the financial level you get to. It's all about admiration from the people around you. All of that. Talk about a million people all thinking that that's where it's at. But all of that, it's that attachment and our desire for these external things, thinking it's out there 2 or 3 days removed from daily study and reflection, and you catch the virus. But if you do those 3 daily practices, question everything, don't take anything for granted, study, reflect daily, then it shifts your inner world, changes your inner world. And then you start to see it change your relationship with the outer. It changes the world around you from the inside out. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.